Good evening, and welcome to the Midnight Wire, your favorite horror news network. I'm your host, KopieFilms, inviting you to join me as we travel through this week's most spine-tingling headlines. Whether you're a die-hard horror fanatic or a casual creeper, you've come to the right place. So turn off those lights, settle in, and enjoy the show. For today's top horror headlines, we'll cover the latest on A24’s new Friday the 13th series, Osgood Perkins' newly announced film, yet another Junji Ito adaptation, and the massive failure of M3GAN 2.0. But before that, I want to give a massive thank you to our sponsors Alan, Twyla, and Kathleen. Without your support, this show would not be possible, so thank you. In case you're unaware, this new Friday the 13th series has been a nightmare to develop. It's undergone leadership changes due to controversy, legal barriers thanks to the confusing rights situation with the IP as a whole, and lots of fan backlash from the focus on Pamela Voorhees instead of Jason, as well as Jason's new official design across all mediums. Furthermore, financial backing for the series ran into a major setback in June of last year when A24 reportedly cut the budget in half for season 1. However, in spite of all of that, filming finally began last month on June 20th, under the production name Mama's Boy. Of course, we know the actual name of the series to be Crytal Lake, but that's old news by this point. Let's talk about the new stuff. The truly exciting update is that some unofficial set photos have been making their way around the internet. Now, A24 is not playing about these, requesting takedowns for almost every single image except for one which has inexplicably been allowed to remain up across a lot of different platforms. So, I'm gonna take the risk and show it to you now because man is it exciting. This is our first look at Pamela Voorhees, expected to be the main villain for season 1. She's being played by Linda Cardellini, best known for her performances as Velma in Scooby-Doo and Cassie in Brokeback Mountain. Aside from this, the other photos are mostly shots of the set from what I've seen. There's some nice looks at the camp, the cabins, and of course the lake, but for fear of the video getting taken down, I'm not going to show you those ones. Now, if this is the first you're hearing of the series, you may immediately think it's a prequel. It's a common misconception that I see regularly, but in all actuality, it's a little bit more than that. Before former showrunner Brian Fuller was fired from the project, the plan was to dedicate each season to retelling the events of the films in a longer, retooled format. It's not exactly a remake series, but not exactly a prequel either. In season 1, we're set to pick up right after Jason's drowning as a child at some point in the 70s. Throughout the season, we'd then follow Pamela in her descent into madness before the resurrection of Jason, who would become the main villain of season 2. Season 2 would then follow the plot of Friday the 13th Part 2, season 3 would follow Part 3, and so on. You get it. However, since production has changed hands, we're not really sure if that's still the case, but if you ask me, it's almost for certain that the Mama's Boy himself is going to show up at some point in the series. I really don't think this is going to be like the Gotham of Friday the 13th. Crytal Lake is currently scheduled to wrap filming in West Milford, New Jersey on November 21st, although this is subject to change. Guys, I am over the moon. This news actually got released after the script for this video was completed, but I knew I just had to add it in. The poster, trailer, and full announcement for one of my favorite director's newest films was just released at noon today. Osgood Perkins, best known for bursting onto the scene with Long Legs in 2024, as well as his appearance in Legally Blonde, is set to direct his latest film, Keeper, starring Tatiana Maslany. Very little is known about the plot so far, as the teaser only shows us a long shot of a woman scribbling on a piece of paper intercut with clips of the setting and people screaming. However, a bit of a deeper look into this project reveals its basic premise. IMDb's summary reads as follows, quote, Liz and Malcolm travel to a secluded cabin for a romantic anniversary getaway. However, Malcolm unexpectedly returns to the city, leaving Liz alone in the cabin where she soon confronts a sinister presence and the cabin's chilling past, end quote. To make this announcement all the more exciting, a release date was posted by Letterboxd on Twitter. I actually have no idea if they were supposed to do this because I haven't seen it corroborated by any other outlet. But according to them, the movie drops in theaters on November 14th, making it Oz's second film this year after The Monkey, which, despite its controversy, I personally loved. I swear this guy doesn't sleep. How has he released these so close together? Junji Ito Crimson was announced on July 3rd at Paris's annual Japan Expo as the latest in a long line of series attempting to adapt the horror legend's work into a different medium. Author Junji Ito is one of, if not the most famous horror manga artist of all time, with his unique, bone-chilling style that makes even the bravest of us a little unsettled. However, outside of the realm of comics, adaptations of his work have never really been received well. The primary reason for this, in my opinion, is just how difficult it is to recreate horror designed specifically to be read in a TV show format. Ito is known for playing with his predictable format in an unpredictable way. Oftentimes, he'll dedicate an entire page to setting up the horrifying images to come, almost daring the reader to turn it. When consuming Ito's work, you always know when something's coming, but you never have any idea what. In practice, when this has been put to film, it rarely ever has the same sting or tension. Like in Adult Swim's Uzumaki, where they just sort of hold on each of these frames for an uncomfortable amount of time. But not in a good way. It feels more like a tensionless jump scare, which is why the announcement of what is, by my count, Ito's 4th TV show is a little concerning. Obviously, each of the former projects have their own unique problems, but they never really escape the fact that this is a generally inferior way to experience Ito's work. Consequently, I'm very cautiously optimistic going into this series. I know this may sound contradictory to what I just said, but I am certain that it's possible to create a good adaptation, it's just that no one's quite cracked it yet. Junji Ito Crimson will focus on a wide variety of Ito's stories instead of just one. The only rule is that they must all somehow relate to the theme of monsters. Furthermore, the show's art style will prolifically feature the color red, which is seemingly exciting to Ito, as he said in an interview with Fangoria, quote, "Just hearing this title makes me excited, and my expectations rise. I have heard that they will select from my old and new short stories to be animated, especially those that can fully utilize the deep red color like blood," end quote. We currently have no other details regarding the production except for the theme song, oddly enough. You're listening to that right now. The song is called Karasuegeha. Damn it. The song is called Karasuegeha, which I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of, and is being performed by prolific Japanese artist Yumi Matsutoya. You may know Matsutoya's work from her song Embraced in Softness, which was featured in Kiki's Delivery Service. But I digress. Here's to hoping that this new show will be the exception we've all been waiting for. The Midnight Wire will continue to provide updates as production develops. M3GAN or M3GAN 2.0 flopped both critically and financially, netting only $10 million domestically in its opening weekend, a drop of $20 million from the first film, which proved to be a runaway success. The worldwide gross for the movie was only $17 million that same weekend, against a budget of $25 million. Now, the movie is entering into its 3rd week in theaters and still has yet to break even, sitting at a reported $22 million return. Now, to some, this may not sound so bad. After all, they're $3 million off from their reported budget. Surely, additional tickets, streaming rights, and Blu-ray sales will account for that. But unfortunately, that's not really how movie financials actually work. In order to account for the marketing and additional costs, a good rule of thumb is to double the production budget, meaning that in reality, the film really needs to make closer to $50 million in order to break even. So when M3GAN passes the $25 million mark, don't expect a 3rd film to be greenlit right away. Blumhouse CEO Jason Blum even commented on the failure in retrospect, saying, quote, "We all thought M3GAN was like Superman. We thought we could do anything to her. We thought we could change genres. We thought we could put her in summer. We could make her look different. We could turn her from a bad guy into a good guy," end quote. Which perfectly transitions us into our next segment, Ghoulish Gossip. It's time for Ghoulish Gossip, where I share my thoughts on whatever it is that is currently seen as controversial in the horror community. This week, I'm just gonna say it, obviously M3GAN 2 flopped. I honestly can't understand why anyone on Earth thought that this was a good idea. A complete genre shift for an already heavily scrutinized IP? Why the hell is this character, who they were marketing as the next horror icon, acting like she's the newest recruit for the Avengers? Not to mention, the quippy one-liners used for the trailer still have that PG-13 horror movie feel. It's a hard thing to describe, but those who really know the genre know exactly what I'm talking about.
Hold on to your vaginas.
M3GAN, in my eyes, never truly reached horror movie icon status. I know that's what they were pushing her for, which makes this move even more baffling, and has caused a number of fans to feel alienated. Full disclosure, I am one of these people. I did enjoy the first movie, but the direction for this one just completely destroyed my excitement. Now, I wonder if a third film in this franchise will even be greenlit. It seems increasingly less likely as discussion around the first film sours, and this movie continues to prove that it was made for a niche that doesn't really even exist. If it does, hopefully that quote from Blum I mentioned earlier indicates that M3GAN will go back to her horror roots. Or maybe Blumhouse will officially be overrun by AI slop at that point. Who knows? Well, I didn't intend on having a second part of Ghoulish Gossip this week, but the announcement of Keeper that we touched on earlier has sent the horror community into debate once again. Oz's latest film, The Monkey, adapted from Stephen King's short story of the same name, has proven to be controversial. As fans of the channel know, I personally fell in love with it, despite not enjoying it as much as Longlegs. But this new announcement has left the wider horror community a bit at odds. Scrolling on Twitter may make it seem like the court of public opinion states that Longlegs was a masterpiece, but possibly a fluke given how few people actually praised The Monkey. Now, a number of commenters on these announcements seem concerned that the film will once again fail to live up to Oz's reputation. Now, I kinda wanted to weigh in here because you'll find that general reception to both of his previous Neon-produced films was generally positive. To me, the reason why so many people like one and not the other is pretty obvious. The Monkey and Longlegs may share a director, but they don't share an intended audience. While Longlegs is a more complicated psychological horror film that touches on religious themes, The Monkey is a much more goofy and gory horror film. It's a comedic popcorn flick that intentionally doesn't carry the same amount of substance or weight as its predecessor. It's sort of like if you did a double feature of The Shining and Final Destination. Neither of these are bad movies, but if you watch The Shining first and then expect Final Destination to be just like that, you'll surely be disappointed. I think a number of people had their expectations set for a movie that Oz simply didn't make. Supporting my theory is the fact that I've seen very little actual criticism of The Monkey today, besides people saying that it was just too silly for them. Fans of Longlegs shouldn't be too concerned, however, as from what I've seen, Keeper has a similarly serious tone. And to my subscribers, you can expect a full review of Keeper later this year. And now, for our final segment of the night, the Fearsome Forecast. Turning it over to Chester, the undead forecaster, for your update on upcoming horror projects. Chester?
Good evening, meat sacks. Chester here. The Fear Forecast this month looks absolutely dreadful, just the way I like it. Tomorrow, Netflix is releasing Zeum, a Thai zombie film in which a martial artist must fight through hordes of creatures to save his dearly beloved. On July 11th, Skill House, a parody of influencer culture featuring... is that 50 Cent? Anyway, the point of this film is to satirize the lengths people will go to for internet fame in the modern day, particularly borrowing concepts from the Saw franchise but set in a content house like Team 10 had in the 2010s. And lastly, I feel a bone-chilling cold front coming on later this month. July's big release is only 10 days away, that of course being I Know What You Did Last Summer, the latest in a long line of classic horror films being resurrected for modern audiences. So stay tuned, my frightful friends, and remember, no matter the weather, horror is always in season. Back to you.
Thanks, Chester. Well, that's gonna do it for this episode of The Midnight Wire. I wanted to try something a little new, so let me know what you all think. Should I continue this series, or leave it to rot? Until next time, always remember, believe to achieve.